Welcome. You are listening to a recording from She Opened the Door, Columbia's first university-wide women's conference, which took place in February 2018. She Opened the Door is a tribute to Winifred Edgerton Merrill, the first woman to receive a degree from Columbia, opening the door for women to gain admission to the university at a time when coeducation for women was under heavy debate.
Welcome to our panel discussion on how to navigate challenges in the workplace. I am Anna Rodriguez, Engineering 86 and 88, and I'm a member of the task force that planned this whole conference. I have the honor of introducing this distinguished panel of alumni. We have Tina Alvarado from Nursing 81, Selma Bueno from Business 05, Ann Gates from Engineering 82, and Shartia Brantley, Journalism 07. She's a moderator for the panel and will give you some background on each of the panelists. Shartia is a Senior Programming Director for Bloomberg Live, the Global Editorial Events Unit. In this role, she crafts the finance, tech, and business conferences with newsmakers and thought leaders. Previously, she worked as a news producer and correspondent on such shows as Mornings with Maria Bartiromo, Women of Power, and CNBC programming. Today, during today's discussion, you will learn how alumni have overcome challenges in navigating through traditional male-dominated industries such as finance and the military, strategies for overcoming bias, and mitigating obstacles and becoming successful in the workplace. Thank you. Shartia?
Thank you so much, Anna, for that lovely introduction. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I don't know about you, but I've had such a great time over the past couple of days. What about yourself? Yeah. It's been a great opportunity just to reconnect. And I don't know about you, but my tank was a little empty. And over the past 2 days, hearing the amazing speakers, my tank, I'm full now. I'm motivated, I feel empowered, and I feel an even greater connection to Columbia, so I'm very excited to be here. Over the past 2 days, we've had some great discussions, and our goal is to keep the momentum going with this topic, how to navigate challenges in the workplace. As Anna mentioned, we're going to talk about myths, overcoming obstacles, and advice for getting ahead. At this time, and I've had the pleasure to speak with these three women in our panel prep call, and they are amazing. And I want each of them to just take a few moments to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Tina.
Hi. Good morning, everybody. Is this on? Yeah, you can hear me. Tina Alvarado. I'll, in September, celebrate my 30th year in the U.S. Navy. So I've had the pleasure and the honor of serving my country for 30 years. And I joined really pretty much right after college. Yeah. And really thought I would only stay 4 years. And so imagine my surprise when I woke up and it's 30 years later. So I'm currently the Deputy Chief for the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, which is the Navy Medical Headquarters, working directly for the Surgeon General. I have 7,000 personnel, doctors, nurses, corpsmen, allied health professionals that I'm responsible for worldwide. Before that, I was the commander of expeditionary medicine, which I'll talk a little bit about when we get to the challenges.
Oh, Tina, can you speak directly into the mic? They can't hear you in the back.
Can't hear in the back. Sorry. A little bit later, I'll talk about expeditionary medicine, which was my favorite tour of duty by far. But I've served in all three wars since the first one, Desert Storm. And I come from Raleigh, North Carolina, originally. And I still have a little horse farm there and a little miniature donkey that my son gave me for Mother's Day that we were just talking about. Because nothing quite says I love you like a little miniature ass. Most mothers get candy, but something's wrong with mine. But at any rate, I'm really honored to be here. I have recently developed a reconnection with Columbia through the nursing school. And recently was honored to be put on the Board of Visitors there for the nursing school. So I'm thrilled and honored to be here, and I hope I'll add some value to your lives. So thanks for inviting me.
Hi, I'm Selma Bueno. I am nowhere close to as accomplished as Tina. I am a proud mom of an eight-month-old baby, so maybe he will learn from your son and give me one donkey one day for Mother's Day. Who knows? I grew up in Brazil. Have been in the U.S. for 18 years, and most of my career have been in investment banking. I worked at Merrill Lynch, and now currently I'm Morgan Stanley. And I am responsible for basically the day-to-day management and running the investment banking division. So I am the CAO for investment banking globally.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm Ann Gates, and I am the oldest on this panel. I came out of the engineering school in '82. And went to Bell Labs, actually was an engineer for a while, then went to Bear Stearns and did investment in the 80s. Then I went to Pepsi and did that for 3 years, and then I did 21 years at the Walt Disney Company. And with both Pepsi and Disney, I was able to move to London, so got some great international experience with both of them. I left Disney after 21 years and became president of the largest privately held toy company. And you don't know competition until you've been in the toy business. And but it was great. I have retired from the toy company, and now I'm doing corporate boards. So I'm on the board of Kroger, which hopefully you guys know. It's Ralph's in California, Harris Teeter in the South. But overall, it's Kroger, and it's $110 billion in revenues, actually. The second board I'm on is Tapestry. Tapestry has the Coach brand, it has Stuart Weitzman, and it also has Kate Spade. So that's a lot of fun. And I'm in the process of joining a third board, which is on the investment banking side. So I'm retired, but not.
Thank you. Oh, and also before we get started, we will have about 20 minutes for Q&A. So think of your questions and feel free to engage us on social media using the hashtag #SheOpenedTheDoor. All right, Selma, I'll start with you. And Sally Krawcheck mentioned it yesterday during her talk about this myth about women and lack of knowledge on finance and fear of the markets, not being so good at math. How has that impacted your experience as a finance professional? Have you had to work through people's, maybe a male's perspective on that?
That's a very good question. Thank you for sending me, giving me the first one. And, they're all hard, by the way. She's really going to be grilling us today. Look, I think to get your foot in the door, you have to prove that you actually are good in math and finance and you have an interest in that. So there are no shortcuts, right? You don't get a pass just because you're a female to get a job in finance. So start from either an engineering background or a finance background, or actually coming to an interview and knowing all your numbers cold and knowing all the, I think in general we probably have to prepare more than men, because you want to overemphasize your strengths in that area. I think once you're in, then I actually faced less of just having to prove myself, because once you passed and got accepted somewhere, that means that you actually cleared the hurdle and they believe in what you can do. But I think as women, and you guys are going to hear from Claire Shipman, I think after this panel and another panel, we just lack this confidence sometimes, and we probably over-prepare. So I probably always went the extra mile to prove that I was more prepared and knew more the numbers and was more interested in all the details than the guys did. They could just wing it. But so there are no shortcuts. I think the myth might be there, but might not be there. I don't think, at least when we are recruiting, we don't think about people differently just because of their gender. Mm-hmm. But if it's in the back of the mind, it's on your subconscious. You have to overcome that somehow, and I think it's by credentializing yourself.
Okay. And if we can all speak directly into the mics, they're having a hard time hearing us in the back. Well, Selma, I just want to take it a step further. So if you look at all the CEOs of the major investment banks, they are men. So what is your perspective on the lack of women in these senior leadership roles? I know a lot of women have made strides on Wall Street. I can name quite a few, but have not been able to break through to that CEO level.
And by the way, I would invite Anne to actually speak to this as well. I don't think it's just finance. I think finance is just something that is in the news and it's prevalent and it's always there. But you probably saw this even in some of your areas that you're part of, and definitely in the Navy and the military in general. First of all, there are very few that get into this job. Then I think we actually need to continue to improve on how we retain. I think people opt out halfway through the career to actually be in a position to be considered for this as they move forward. And we just need more. We need more at-bats, and we haven't had enough at-bats. So I think we're making a really conscious effort on that. We have very good CFOs in investment bank, and I think in the consumer space we now have actually very good CEOs. So we're slowly getting there, but we just need more, right? It's just if you have more people, you have more chance of actually having more people in senior positions. Or maybe actually women are smart and they don't want to be CEOs because it's a really tough job.
That's true.
I was like, maybe it's easier to actually be the COO than the CEO because it's it's a different kind of proposition. Who knows, right? But I think we just need more. It's just we don't have enough that actually are rising to the level of actually getting to be considered.
Mm-hmm. Tina, do you have anything to add from the military perspective?
I think one of the things I'm most proud of is recently we had the first 4-star female admiral. And she became the deputy chief of naval operations. Not only was she the first female, but she was the first African American. And so I think that the Navy has a lot of firsts for women. Certainly for me, it was a huge opportunity because I was the first Hispanic admiral, admiral of Hispanic descent, to make 1-star, and then I made 2-star. So now I'm the first for both ranks. So they're still, even this late in the century, they're still achieving firsts. But slowly but surely, I think we're getting there. There's probably 285 admirals in the Navy, and of those, there's probably 40 females. So it's still small, in comparison, but growing. So,
Anne, do you have
I would agree. I think the news continues to get better as far as women are concerned. One of the big initiatives has been 20% women on boards, and so the big slogan was 2020. Well, the good news is they hit it in 2017. So, and so now they're upping it to 30. Now, of course, you should argue that we should be at 50%. So we do have a long way to go, but it's starting to get there. I think the other thing that is very important and was very important in my career was having people that were willing to take you seriously in the roles. And I do think as the younger generation is coming up, there are not as many barriers to thinking of women as being capable. So I think that's also a key too, in terms of the fact that the mindset is changing and the questions of how people are selecting the people at the top are changing too. Very often now it will be, okay, we need a diverse slate to look at. And, the headhunter will basically be shown the door if they don't come in with a diverse slate. So I think all of those types of things are really starting to help. But, the progress is slow. We're only at 21% of the board seats. So there's a ways to go, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, women are known to be collaborators and for being inclusive. Tina, how have you used these traits to be successful in your field?
Well, the Navy, there's no I in Navy, we say, and it's a big team sport, actually. We can't do anything without the power of the team. And I think that's something that women do really, really well because we're good collaborators, we're really good team builders, and we are able to inspire teams to be high-performance teams. And so I think that singularly, that's one of the biggest things that women bring to the table in terms of success. is they don't try to do it all on their own. They realize the power is in the we, and you multiply your success by tenfold each time you pull together a high-performing team and go forward. And I've seen it play out time and time again, obviously, in the Navy, and in real-life combat situations where you really are relying on your shipmate for your life, all the way to boardrooms. And I just think that's something that women do really well. We're very ingenious about the way we collaborate with each other, the way we support each other, that we tend to be inclusive, we tend to be good mentors.
All right. Well, Anne, can you share an example where you successfully overcame a challenge that you felt was primarily based on your gender and your experience?
That's interesting. So, there was a point in my career where I had 3 young children. And again, I always, for the most part, had bosses that were very supportive of me both being a mother and having a career at the same time. What was interesting was the biggest challenge I actually had was when I reported to a woman who was older than me. And my first clue should have been when we had dinner together, and she said, in my generation, you had a choice. It was children or a career. And that should have been my first clue. But, being dense, I went ahead and took the job. And it was an interesting time because, she very much felt, being at the office from 8 to, 9 was necessary. Whereas I felt, if you manage your team well, you manage your work well, you can actually get out at 6:30, and I did not believe in scheduling meetings that started at 7 o'clock at night. So I would say that was probably my biggest challenge. What was interesting was I was her CFO, and she was very creative. And she knew nothing about finance. So the fact that I was good in finance and kept her out of trouble, kept her on budget, all of this sort of stuff, she knew she couldn't lose me, even though at the same time she didn't appreciate the choices that I was making vis-a-vis my career.
That's a great point.
But, and this is a good point. It's just, not just male that will think that way, right? In your example, you actually had a female that felt that way, and you had to dispel that myth. So I actually think that today you probably have male bosses that are a lot more enlightened and supportive of flexible work arrangements, and knowing that if you're actually really good at something, they trust that you're going to get it done, more than some like old school, female bosses. So you're going to prove somehow, somewhere, your value, and then just prove that actually you can do it in your own way. And slowly, I think women are really good at that. Like we're going to go like through the sides, gently, maybe can I just have that meeting at 5 instead of 6, and or can I get back to you? When do you need this, right? So that I actually can go attend my parent that needs something, or my kid that needs something. So I think we're much better at like that kind of flexibility, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In my world, when I joined the Navy, the saying was, if the Navy wanted you to have a child, they would issue you one. And so that pretty much tells you what they thought about it. Along with your combat boots, you would get a child. But I think my biggest challenge was that was gender-based. Was I was asked to go to be the commanding officer of a unit out of Dallas-Fort Worth that was a fleet hospital. Now, at the time, fleet hospitals were 500-bed hospitals that were huge and hard to move around. And we were in Afghanistan, and it wasn't useful because Afghanistan, if you think about it, there was a firefight here, tomorrow it's over here, and the next day it may be 20 kilometers north, and you needed to be able to get there quickly to save lives. This was actually, I said Afghanistan, Iraq, before Afghanistan. And so they were going to stand down that hospital platform. And so I show up, I'm the first female and the first nurse to command this unit. And every senior executive that was to work for me quit, literally. They were captains, so they had the option to retire. So, like my senior medical executive retired, my director for administration retired, my executive officer, who's the second in command to the CO, opted to prolong his orders in battle rather than come work for me. Wow. I'm serious. The only person that I had on the executive team that stuck by me was the senior nurse executive. Just saying. But I came in this unit, they were sure that I was coming to take away their commission status, that I was coming to stand down the unit, because they knew that their usefulness as the platform had outlived itself. But instead, I walked in and on the first day and I said, look, you guys look a little down in the mouth and not all that happy to see me, but I'm here and deal with it. And I said, so let's figure out what our future is going to be. We know what our future is not. Let's think about what our future is. And these people were so talented and so creative, and they were so good at field medicine that they actually, over the next 3 months, as a team, we came up with the concept of expeditionary medicine. And we developed a 10, 50-bed, and 150-bed expeditionary medical platform. So depending on how big the firefight was, you could deploy the 10-bed, it fit inside one C-130 aircraft, and the team went in another C-130. It could be anywhere, set up and operating anywhere in the world in 72 hours, which was very flexible, very mobile, very agile, very not what the 500-bed platform could do. And so we sent it forward to Washington, thinking that they would say, you know, thank you very much for your ideas. If we want your ideas, we'll beat it out of you. But instead, they said, great idea, stand it up. And we were like, what? We stood up the first Reserve Expeditionary Medical Facility. So to me, that was huge, because I came in at a real disadvantage because I was a female, because I was a nurse, and we turned it around. And that team, they became plank holders, which in the Navy means if you're the first team on a ship, you get a piece of the ship's plank as to prove that you were part of the first. And they got planks as the first to stand up an expeditionary medical facility, and they'll always remember that. And it was just such a huge honor for me to be a part of something so big and so creative. So it may look negative, but you have the power to turn it around.
Mm-hmm. You brought up a great point earlier. You've made history being 1-star, 2-star admiral. Let's talk about intersectionality a little bit. Did you feel you faced additional scrutiny because you are of Hispanic origin?
I really didn't. I come from a big Hispanic family, 7 children, 5 girls, 2 boys. My mother was a nurse. She worked through all 7 of us. My grandmother actually my grandfather died of, he was a drinker, and he died of cirrhosis of the liver at a very young age, and left her as a single mother to raise my dad and his sister. In the D.C. area, back in the 30s, it was not an easy time. And she became one of the first women to work on Capitol Hill, because at the time, congressional aides were only men. And somehow she convinced this congressman that she could do the job. And so I come from a family of pioneering women, and because of her, my dad was like, what do you mean you're a woman? I don't even want to hear that in this household. My girls are going to do whatever they want to do and be whatever they want to be. So I really felt empowered from a very early age. And I was always proud of being Hispanic. It wasn't something that I saw as a negative, and so I never allowed anybody else to look at it negatively either, I don't think.
So for me, it was interesting. I think part of it is that most of my career was in California or it was in London. And so California, of course, being the liberal place that it is, you did see that, especially even in the entertainment companies. And then when you move to London, I think because you're American, that's what they see first. And so, because especially the second time I moved out there, African-American woman going to be heading up all of Europe in the emerging markets for consumer products for Disney. Nobody missed a beat. I mean, it couldn't have been more seamless, and the way that we were able to pull together as a team was amazing, and I think it's because they saw me as American. So I didn't have the, sort of the finger in your face saying, you are African American woman, you can't do this. What you do have to deal with are the things where people say to you, oh, I don't really think of you as being black. And that's when you just go, okay, so they've defined black as this is their stereotype. Oh, wait, I don't fit into the stereotype, therefore I must not be black. I mean, that's the reasoning they were using. And it's what Sally mentioned yesterday in terms of you just have to smile and you change the subject quickly. And so it was those little things that you would have to deal with. But again, was that worth upsetting the apple cart? To me, it wasn't worth upsetting the apple cart, but it was definitely there. And it was, it's frustrating to think that people have sat there and said, oh, because you're doing what you're doing, I'm not going to change my perception over here. I'm just going to put you somewhere else. And that's a very frustrating position to be in.
Yeah. By the way, sometimes actually being different or being the only one can actually be advantageous to you, right? Well, you're going to stand out. You're gonna be memorable. So take that and actually use that to your advantage. And then don't see yourself as different. See yourself as equal. I think Carla Harris might say something on her book about this. Just act like as if you were one of them. Don't let it roll off your back. Just move on and just keep doing. If you act like you're one, they're going to believe you're one. So if you act like you're actually successful, they're going to believe you're successful. If you act like you're just one of them, or that you're part of them, that you're actually there to help everyone, they're not going to notice if you're a female or a male, if you're Hispanic, black, or white. It doesn't matter, right? If you keep putting that in your head, then you're actually going to probably draw more attention than what you need. That's my humble opinion.
That's a good point. Most of us have heard of the term the glass ceiling, but in the military there's a term called the brass ceiling, barriers that keep women from progressing in the military and law enforcement. Tina, in your view, have we been able to pierce the brass ceiling over the past few years?
I think we have. There's about 20% of the military is now female. And, it's been traditionally a male-dominated, and it still is, for the virtue of the fact of what they do. Not a lot of women are attracted to that lifestyle. You move every 2 years, for example. You have to have, if you're married, you have to have a spouse that supports that. It can be a difficult and arduous life, and a lot of women don't opt it. So I think that, but there are about 67,000 females in the Navy today, and that's significant. The way our promotion system is so objective that I think it's gender blind. I really do. It's very much, we don't put pictures up anymore of people, and we just look at the merits of their record. And it's almost impossible to inject bias into it, the way our promotion system works. It's probably one of the best systems, I think, for really selecting based on true success factors and attributes than anything I've ever seen. So I think that women can excel in the military. We are now have opened up every community in the Navy is now open to women, including Navy SEALs, and we've just admitted our first female into SEAL training, which is huge. And more power to her. I couldn't do it. No way would I want to do that. But the roles are changing, and in the military, just as they are in the civilian sector, I think. And I already mentioned the percent that are flag officers, and that's pretty. It's a little bit below 20%. It's probably more like 12%. So it could be higher, but it's almost reflective of the percentage that are in the military, females.
Okay. Now, Tina, you also mentioned in our prep call about, companies embracing fairness and equity. As women leaders, how do we ensure a just and fair, equitable culture?
Right, and I think that as leaders, that's probably one of the things that is so important, and something that women, frankly, do better than men, and that is to create a culture of a collaborative culture, as we talked about before. But also as a health professional, it's very meaningful to me because, stress in the workplace is the number one health problem for workers. It really is. I think Harvard Business Review reported that healthcare expenditures at high-pressure companies are nearly 50% greater than other companies. And the American Psychological Association estimated recently that more than $500 billion is siphoned off from the U.S. economy because of workplace stress. And 50 million workdays are lost each year due to stress on the job. And so as leaders, we have a duty, an important duty, and especially in the high-stress profession that I'm in, to make sure that we create a fair and just culture where people feel safe, where they feel accepted, that it's a culture based on integrity and trust and loyalty. And if you have that kind of culture, no command that I've ever been in charge of has ever had a sexual harassment charge. No sexual assault in any of the commands that I've ever led. And I don't think it's because of me. I think it's because I come in with the attitude that that's a zero-tolerant thing, and we would not do that because we have respect for each other. You respect your shipmate. How could you have shipmate on shipmate assault and the next day be asked to save their life? It just doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen. Yet the military has problems with sexual harassment and sexual assault, and we're working, to combat that in a big way. But it's basically establishing a caring environment where you're interested in the people that you work in, that you provide support for one another, that you avoid blame, and you don't expect people to not make mistakes, that you have a forgiving environment. You have to be able to inspire each other to do and give your personal best. You have to emphasize the meaningfulness of the work they do. How do you think, the military doesn't pay very well, but we're asking people, hey, by the way, would you like to make $30,000 a year and potentially have people shooting at you? And people sign up, right? So what are we doing? How are we inspiring that? You have to use something larger than yourself to want to do that. And so I think as leaders that you have to lead to that inspiration and that commonality. And I think in the end, what you create is an environment of where people want to work and people want to be a part of.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Culture is absolutely key. Any place that I've gone into, first I work on the team dynamics at the top and make sure that everybody is working together. When I went to London the second time, that team was not working together at all. It was like they weren't even in the same office. And so the first thing I had to do was to get that leadership team working as a team, and we did some very specific steps in terms of making sure that we felt as a team, and then worked with HR to create that culture such that people felt included, part of it. They understood what the mission was, what the vision was, what the goals were for the year. All of that communication is so key. And then, as the last step, we measured it. So, were we getting the vision out there? Did people understand our mission? Did they feel that if they hit the objectives that we set for them, that they were going to get compensated appropriately, et cetera, et cetera? And we measured ourselves by those surveys. And each survey, we made sure we were a high-performing group, but there was always something we could improve. And therefore, we took those items that we felt we needed to improve, and again, as a team, worked on it to try and get it, and then measured it the next year. So I do think culture makes all of the difference, and I had gone over to Europe right in the middle of the financial crisis, and we were the only region around the world that was actually still growing during the financial crisis. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that we were focused on culture. I really think that's key.
Yeah, and you have to be fair and consistent, right? And again, just looking back to women, and something that Tina said, we are more tuned to what's happening. We are probably more aware of someone that might need help or something that might not be right. So it behooves us all actually to speak up, to actually pull someone to the side afterwards and say look, I don't like the way that you actually acted in front of your colleagues. This is not the way that we actually interact here, or not in accordance to our culture. And actually you start creating an environment people feel comfortable coming and telling you things, right? So as leaders, we actually have to create an inclusive, open, so that people feel comfortable coming to you, but you can't create different sets of standards. You have to be fair and consistent with your values.
Mm-hmm. Great point. A Financial Times analysis conducted last year showed that, I want to talk a little bit more about pipeline development now. This Financial Times analysis showed that the majority of junior staff working in financial services are women, but only 1 out of 4 of those reach a senior role. And Selma, I know you mentioned it briefly earlier about sometimes opting out, but what can the finance industry do to, even if someone does step away for a few years to start a family or what have you, what can the industry do to attract these women back into the industry, and for those who are there, help them go through the ranks?
Yeah, look, it's a tough profession, but it's no different than what Tina mentioned. It's a lifestyle choice, right? But at the same time, we need more women at senior levels servicing our clients, because our clients are becoming more diverse. They have more women making decisions. Our clients are actually going to be investing their money. So if you think about wealth management, they're going to want to interact with people that look like them, that think like them. So we actually have to continue to invest in retention and development so that people don't opt out. So I think that means that you actually have to start thinking more creatively and being more flexible, and thinking about different job descriptions or different styles of work, so that you can actually have a team that can play to all different games and all different moves. But it's slow. We're getting there, and it's small moves of you allow someone to actually work from home once a week, or you allow someone to take time off and then return and have a different set of accounts, or so that you can actually start, or then someone actually passes all that phase, and they're in a phase where their kids are all out of college and they want to actually recharge and come back and do it again. So we just need to be able to have and offer all of that so that people don't leave and opt out. And then I think most of the firms, not just ours and not just in financial services, have a great program called Return to Work or equivalents, where we're actually bringing people back. And I think investing on that, because sometimes you do opt out, and you have, for whatever reason, right? You have to care for a parent or a child, you have a health scare, and, maybe you want to come back, and we need to create an environment where we're actually bringing people back.
Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about the role of mentoring and sponsorship. What role has having a mentor played in your success and your development?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have not had a mentor in my career. However, what I have had are at least 3, if not 4, very good bosses who were really, it was based on merit in terms of how they promoted people. And they couldn't care less, what skin color you were, what gender, et cetera, all they wanted were results. And to have 3 or 4 bosses like that I think I was incredibly lucky. And they gave me the support because at the end, in terms of our division, our chairman said to me, I think you should be my successor, but you need to convince the others that you should be my successor. And it was very good advice, and because we had such a good team spirit, we got to that place where that team really felt that I should be moved up to the next level. But it was all because of my bosses, and again, because they focused on merit. And it was very beneficial, too, that it was merit, and it wasn't, oh, I'm going to put her here because she's X. It was because it was that I was doing the job that needed to be done, and I was delivering, and they were going to give me the benefit of the perks and all of that sort of stuff that come with it, because we know there's a lot of times where you can be doing the job and you don't get recognized because you're not out on the golf course or you're not hanging out at the bar, et cetera, et cetera. And I just happened to have 3 people who wanted to go home to their wives, didn't feel that, you know, we needed to hang out in some geisha bar in Japan to bond and all of that sort of stuff. So it helped.
You know, mentoring is a very big deal in the Navy. We have formal mentoring programs, but in particular, the women mentor each other very, very aggressively. But you know what? Over the course, and so I've had a lot of mentors, but over the course of my career, the most powerful mentors to me were men, because they taught me to think like a man, basically. They taught me to think differently, and had I stuck with all female mentors, I probably wouldn't be here today, because I was expected to lead men as well as women, and so I needed to be able to understand that diversity and the divergence of opinion and particularly style. It's more style rather than the way you think. And in particular, the best ones were line officers, who are the combatant types, you know, and they are really macho dudes. And it was all I could do to sit through meetings with some of them because they were so testosterone-driven. But I really learned a lot. And I think that was, you know, mentors are very important to me. And it's one of the favorite things that I do now, because as I entered the twilight of my career, my most favorite thing, the thing that lets me sleep at night, is knowing that some of the folks that are coming up behind me are way more talented than I ever dreamed of. And I'll be able to go out, you know, knowing that the Navy's in good hands. But I think get mentors that aren't like you. That's important.
I want to shift. I know we're running out of time here. Talk about knowing your value. Selma, what has been the biggest lesson learned in seeking advancement? What role did sponsorship play in your progression?
Yeah, I can't stress enough that it's a team sport, right? So, like, you're not doing this on your own. So you have to really think about everyone above, those that report directly to you. You're not going to advance on your own. You will be surprised, and I had some pleasant surprises in life of people that you didn't even know were speaking on your behalf and actually, praising you in circumstances that you didn't even know, right? But it was because of one small thing that you might have done. Maybe you actually helped that person make an introduction to get that person a job, right? Or to win an account, or to advance, and you didn't even know that you actually did that. So you cannot stress enough, it's a team sport. You have to think about everyone, and it's a two-way street, right? I think Susie Huang spoke to you, those that were here on Friday evening, about networking and mentorship. It's really important. It's a two-way street, and you have to think about that. It's a really small world. You don't know, but you're touching people in all these different parts of the world where actually are going to have an impact on your advancement.
Mm-hmm. I talk to a lot of young journalists, ask me a lot about negotiating salaries. A lot of people are uncomfortable doing that, and also even negotiating your annual raises and things like that. Anne, can you share any advice on what people should do? Because that is a part, we put in the work. Oftentimes we're not compensated for it. And what women can do to be just a little bit more confident about having that discussion.
Yeah, sometimes I look back at some of the moves I made and said, really, you did that? So, I was very much, I believed in fairness. So if I saw someone that was director level and I had a senior manager title and we were doing the same job, I was in my boss's office saying, I don't understand why I don't have this promotion. So I did that more than once. VP, definitely at the director level. In terms of, I was just, I was using that engineering mind in terms of, X equals Y, therefore compensation, title, bonuses, all of that stuff should be the same. And then later I was able to cheat because I was CFO and I knew everybody's salaries. And so then it really became, I'm not going to play this game where I'm getting compensated less than other people who are doing the same job. Also, when I went to negotiate to be president of the toy company, we had come to an agreement on a dollar amount, and then, it got exciting, president of a company, he thought that was going to be his opportunity to sort of dial things back, and, again, I had my number in my mind, and that was the number I had to get or I was going to walk. But I had to be prepared to walk, and that's where, you have to really decide, are you going to take the other side of that action? But the whole time, I was about fairness for everybody, but that also included me.
In the Navy, you're expected to write what is called your own fitness report from the time that you're a baby officer. And if you don't advocate for yourself, you're not going to get promoted. And so you learn very quickly to lose that inhibition about telling the world how wonderful you are. And so you learn to do it in a way that was realistic, and obviously you separate the wheat from the chaff if it's not directly tied to goals and data that could be supported. But it was never a problem because of the system that I grew up in. Maybe when I transfer to the civilian life, I'll be wrong as rain, but it's worked so far. It wasn't money, but it was promotions.
The beauty is that there's a lot more information out there, so you can do your due diligence and
that's
figure out how much you're worth it. Right? Like, it's different. Like, you're not flying blind.
Right. That's a good point. Well, I would like for each of you to share with us who has opened the door for you, and you can give me a professional and or a personal or both example.
Okay. I think for the most part, I have to say, I just hate it because it's sort of everybody's go-to, but it's really true. In terms of my parents, in terms of the way that I was raised, I mean, they basically just, as far as they were concerned, gender doesn't show up. Race doesn't show up, and it was funny because I went to Cal undergrad, and I had said to my father, I'm going to major in political science and economics, and he said, nope, you are not, because you won't get a job coming out of school if you have those degrees. And I just thought it was interesting, and he said, you are doing math or you are doing engineering. That's your choice. And it's just interesting that, again, he wasn't seeing gender. There were no women in engineering at that point in time, but they just didn't see it, and they just expected you to do the best that you could do. And so then when I got in the workplace and all of that sort of stuff, I didn't have any of that stuff. I can't do this because I'm a woman. I can't do this because I'm African American. I had always been taught you can do whatever you want to do. And so that was very important to me.
No, parents rock, right? They're awesome. I actually going to take the opposite of that and say I think there are lots of people that open the door, and we don't even know that they opened the door for you. They might have just cracked a little opening, and then you open it, and someone else open it. So there are lots of people throughout my life, starting from my parents, who, God bless them, allow me to just come and fly really far away and be away from them, right? All the way to people today that actually might help you with the smallest thing. So Susie Wong was here on Friday is one of them. It just you can name a long list.
I think, we are all here on the backs of the females that came before us, let's face it, all the pioneers, and there's so many. For me, it was military women who were strong and really good at their jobs that opened the door for me, and I may not have never even met them, but the fact that they did what they did allowed me to rise to that same level, if given the opportunity. And I was given the opportunity. But I agree with you, Ann. My dad, his motto was no limits, but he did say, you can be whatever you want to be in your life, but first you're going to be a nurse, because nurses will always have a job, because there's always, no matter where you are, whatever city, town, country, they always need nurses. And so you'll always be employed and therefore off my payroll. He said, but after that, you can go do whatever you want to do. So, yeah, my dad was definitely a door opener for me. But I really think that when in the twilight of my career here, I think about all the fierce females that came before us, and we owe a lot to them. And that's been the whole theme of this conference, which I think is just awesome.
Okay, I think we have one more minute before we do Q&A. So my final question is, what advice, we have women in the audience who are just embarking on their careers. What advice can you give them to minimize the hurdles they may face?
It's interesting because my guess is especially the younger people in this audience are very well prepared coming out of Columbia. I think the one thing that's interesting to me that I've really been appreciating lately is understanding that piece on EQ and understanding personality types. And unfortunately, in corporations, they sit there and they say, oh, you're an ENTJ, and I can't even remember what that means. So even if I have it myself and I'm supposed to interact with people who have that, so unfortunately, I don't think the corporate world sets you up that well for it. And in my career, I've had to deal with a lot of celebrity executives, and it's understanding what drives them that I think is really crucial to understand, and especially in this world where the top is grabbing more and more of the pie, and you're dealing with billionaires and all of that sort of stuff, that mentality that you're dealing with is not that straightforward mentality you think of that's sitting in a Fortune 500 company. And I think that piece is the thing I would do extra reading on and understand in terms of the personality types that you're going to be dealing with when you get to the top, because some of them I had never seen before.
You mean Mickey Mouse is really tough?
It was Cinderella.
Yeah, that's right.
She was wicked.
Well, we have time for Q&A. I guess, are we running the mics or, okay. Okay. Oh, and if you can give your name, your class and school.
Hi, so I'm Diana Contreras, and I was PNS 91, MPH 214, and I have a son who's graduating from Columbia now. And my question has to do with the fact that I've now taken on a very large leadership role. And previous to what I've taken on, I don't mean to make it sound in a gender-based way, but it is. It was very much an all-male kind of world. And I'm in medicine, and medicine still very much has a hierarchy in it. And many nurses are still women, and many physicians are still men. And we have a lot of residents who are now women, and a lot of attendings who are men. And I've come in only over the last 4 months and found that there's a lot of bullying and gender discrimination. And and it's very common in medicine. I don't think people realize it, but it's very common in medicine. And I've taken the stance of zero tolerance, and that I am calling people out on what is not acceptable. It is not acceptable to me, it is not acceptable to society, and it should be unacceptable to the organization that I work for. However, when I reach out to the organization, there are no processes that are robust to help us to drive this. And so much of what has gone on in the past is let's just sweep it under the carpet. I have a conversation with you, and I tell you your behavior's bad, stop doing that, and we move on. And I'm trying to build a different kind of environment. I don't know if any of you have been exposed to that kind of a world where the organization itself is not as in tune almost to what's going on in the world. And I do believe the young millennials are not accepting of this environment. And I have a lot of young millennials who also work for me that I then have to mentor forward, because young residents a lot of them are women now, especially in OBGYN where I'm in. And so I'm trying to set the standard and an example, and I'm meeting somewhat of the pushback from my own organization. I'm looking for advice.
Well, I think, first of all, it's really, really hard to mandate individual behavior. So whenever you're talking about a situation where you want someone to behave a certain way, it's difficult. I mean, it's just difficult. The Navy and the military have struggled with it for years, from tailhook back in the 90s to recent, we finally let women on submarines, and what's the first thing you read about? They're, the 20-somethings are taking photos of the women in showers on the submarine. You're in close quarters, men and women, they're young ages, and there's bad behaviors bound to happen. But I think you hit on the topic. What happens when it does happen, and what kind of swift policy comes into place to state strongly that this type of behavior is not acceptable? We have a zero tolerance. And our organization is pretty good about that. We could always do better, especially when the allegation is against someone of a higher rank. It tends to be a little bit not as swift as the younger and, junior officers or junior enlisted. I think that your crusade is a good one, and I encourage you to continue it, and I encourage you to take it up the ladder or the hierarchy and insist that the organization back its people. And it has to do with that culture, too, that we talked about.
Yeah, the only thing I'll also add to this is, what was interesting to me on the Me Too movement was, in particular, one of the guys who I won't name, clearly has done a lot of wrong in terms of the sexual harassment. The thing that sort of kills me about it is his behavior was a lot of that bullying and all of that sort of stuff that had nothing to do with the Me Too movement, and it's the Me Too that's calling him out as opposed to the bullying, which involved chairs being thrown across rooms, staplers flying across the room and all of that sort of stuff. So this bullying thing does need to be addressed. It hasn't been addressed well. It does come down to the culture in terms of, getting that executive team under you to buy into what that culture is, and then them working with you to push it down. I've been very lucky in my career in terms of I've had excellent HR people to work with, and so we've been in sync. But I think this bullying thing is something that still needs to be addressed by society, and it isn't yet.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anastasia Koptseva, and I'm C's class of 09. And Anne, I was also forced to do engineering because when I told my mom I wanted to go study religious studies, she said, "No, you're not getting a job." And I come from a family of engineers. And Tina, thank you so much for your service. I know we touched upon a topic about that now we are kind of changing. I work in finance, so yes, we give women maternity leave. We have now parental leave. We have all of these perks, but sometimes it feels like it's a bit of an add-on because the way that these companies have been set up, and I'm talking about these large public corporations, they don't really operate based on the values of inclusion. They were set up back in the day by men for men. If you look at companies like Patagonia is a unique case study of a company that really kind of built itself and its processes around their core values of inclusion. So if you go to their corporate offices, they have on-site daycare where employees can have lunch with their kids. They can interact and get to know families kind of within the company environment. And to me, that really speaks to the fact that they're accepting the way of life, kind of the natural idea of, people grow up and have families and children. Let's build this into a company. However, they are privately held companies, so they don't have to respond to kind of their investors. So my question is, do you think that the progress that we are making with kind of the large 500, Fortune 500 companies is actually real progress, or are we just kind of adding these good-to-have add-ons in order to show that we are making progress, but we're not really integrating it into the way we operate? Thank you.
I think it is progress. It's better than what we had. And, if you think about a really large ship, like moving a tanker, it takes a while, right? So moving a company that has 100 years of history, that was created by man, for man, in a world where actually that's how they operated, it takes time. And you have to keep at it, right? It's just, like eventually we're going to get there. Think about how technology has changed the world, the way that we interact and do our job today. That's a big component. Maybe it is a daycare, but by the way, each company is going to be different because it's a different skill set that they need. It's a different business, or the way that you actually you can't put a daycare in a deployed ship, right? Like you can't. Your son
Can't take your baby to work.
right. So it just also, by the way, you actually then they have to choose where you want to be, right? Because it might not, maybe you'd rather work for Patagonia than work for the Navy, right? You're going to make choices. But I think there is progress. If we don't believe there's progress, then why are we doing it?
But even institutions like the Navy, who you wouldn't think would be good at this, have on-off ramps now where you can leave the Navy for 3 years and either go pursue a higher education or have a child or, do something different and then come back in and not have lost your place in line for promotions. We have 6 months maternity leave, for example. This was unheard of at the time when I joined the Navy. So I believe I've seen a lot of progress, at least in the military. And it's for men as well as women. Men are allowed to take 6 months to be with their child.
Yeah, I think one of the things, there was a talk I went to that Barack Obama was giving, and he was talking about racial progress, but he was talking about the arc of history and how long it is. And, he was giving everybody perspective in terms of, the Civil War, then it took 100 years for the Civil Rights Act, and then, he was elected, but then, 6 years later, you really needed the Black Lives Matter movement. So, and I think as Faye said, it's messy in terms of these changes that are taking place, but the arc for change, in terms of now, I can look back with a lot longer look than you're able to. It's night and day in terms of what I had to deal with in the beginning of my career, where everybody in the office was male, and it was time to go out, and they would go to the males-only club. So that meant everybody going out in the office was going except for me. None of that stuff is really taking place anymore. So the changes that I've seen, you should feel good about what you're going to see even over the next 10 years, I think.
Just check with us old people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Hi, I'm Carlotta. I'm with the School of Professional Studies IKNS program 2016. I've been a woman in tech for the last 17, 20 years, and I've found it's really helpful to have a playbook, kind of a set of phrases that I can use when somebody says something egregious or shocking or really even subtle, right? And one of my phrases that I've been teaching to young women is, I want you to think about what you've just said, and I'm giving you the opportunity to say something else, right? Because it puts them on notice, right? But it gives them the chance to self-correct immediately. So my question, ladies, do you find that you have kind of stock phrases that you come back to when you're dealing with somebody who has done something or said something egregious or shocking or even subtle that you've found to be very effective?
I've had actually invited someone, go out of the office, come back again, and let's redo this, because I don't think that's what you meant.
It's very similar, yeah.
I think in my case it's been a little harder because you can definitely do that with a subordinate, and I actually even recommend doing that with a subordinate because, God, they should thank you later for what they will be learning from doing that. The problem becomes, when it's the CEO who does it or the chairman of the board who does it, that type of thing. And what I tend to do is smile, pivot, and then if there's a later point in some conversation, maybe 5 months later, because I will retain it in the back of my mind, then, you can have that subtle conversation with them that doesn't even refer back to them, but helps to educate them, because in the end that's what we're trying to do, right? Is to educate them on behavior that makes people feel comfortable. But yeah, you have to play it by ear in terms of the level of the person you're dealing with, for sure.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I graduated from the School of Social Work in 2016. I work in the male-dominated field of Congress, but I'm fortunate to work for some really kick-butt ladies. I run our internship program and a group for youth in Congress, and I'm seeing these really capable young women and girls coming to our office just filled with self-doubt. That they don't belong there or that they haven't earned the right to be there, where I'm seeing the young men come in really confident and excited for the work that they can accomplish. How can we help the next generation of young women gain that confidence to know that they belong in traditionally male-dominated workplaces?
Tina, can you start with that?
Okay. I think, I deal with 18-year-olds all the time. They come into the Navy as 18-year-olds. Usually because their mother can't stand them anymore, and so she sends them to me. And it's my job to build their confidence, and this is equally true for the boys, and they are boys and girls at that age to me. And so I try to start them out small by saying, look, I don't care what you're doing, you're the lowest at the totem pole, but be good at something and stand out for something. I don't care if you're known to be the gal or the guy whose uniform is always impeccable. Be known for something. I don't care if you're the guy or the gal who is the one who always shows up for work early. And I'm not even talking about knowledge set here yet, because they still have time to build that. Just start your life out by being good, really good, at something small, and build on it. I think that's the best way we can help them.
Do you have anything else to add?
Well, the one thing I will say is that there's been a study done on SAT taking, and I think it's with African American males, and if they say something about telling them that this test is going to measure something, the results actually go down in terms of, the pressure of it becomes too much for them. And I think there's a little piece that it definitely does happen when you are the only one, or you're the first of the first five and all of this sort of stuff, in terms of have you gotten there because you deserve to get there, or are you there because they had to fill 5 slots? And I think the big difference is really going to come when there's enough of us there that people start to understand, we really are dealing with a meritocracy. And so I think those women who do come in, I totally 100% understand their self-doubts. And I think, just reminding them that they belong there, that they've worked hard to get there, being a role model for them. I think all of those things are really important, because I do think that as people are breaking into a field, it does become, why did I really get through that door?
Hi, my name is Susan Goldstein. I'm with the Business School class of '86. My question is about sponsorship. It's actually a new concept that I've learned here at this conference, and I want to figure out how I can integrate it more into my particular career. And I'm not in a corporate structure. I'm a commercial real estate specialist, so I'm an independent contractor. So I think the sponsorship may need to come more from the companies that I am soliciting business from than particularly within my corporate organization. So I want to see if you can give me some ideas on how to solicit sponsors in that kind of context.
A couple of things, think about, so sponsors are very different than mentors, and I'm sure you've heard this ad nauseum throughout the conference. Think about your clients who can actually speak on your behalf and about what you do. Think about people that you've worked in the past that can be your sponsors. And you don't necessarily ask someone to be your sponsor. I think you actually, you develop a relationship and you prove that you're good at something. And then, and then you might have a situation where you're like, I need someone to go speak on my behalf. Can you do that? Or they might be put in a situation that they're going to speak on your behalf. I'm not as familiar with your line of work, but you start thinking about just your board of advisors, everyone that you interact with, and who can actually speak about what you're capable of, and open doors for you, pun intended.
All right. Thank you. Well, thank you.
Hi, I'm Mel. I'm currently finishing up a PhD in Cs. I'm a physicist. My subfield just got real proud for hitting 5% women last year.
Wow.
And so I wanted to ask about what I've been kind of calling professional neglect, like the inverse of mentorship, where women of people in color in my subfield aren't even given the same amount of kind of care through graduate school and postdoctoral positions as straight white men are. And so it leaves us in this position where, like, we get told, find a mentor, find a sponsor, but especially in that career track, there isn't a lot of being able to go find these other people. And I know in the professional world, a lot of the advice is leave if you're being treated that way. But again, that's not possible in all career tracks. And so I'm looking for alternatives, things you can do when you're you can't leave, but you need to find someone beyond who should normally be mentoring you to do that.
I think people really want to be a part of your success. And so if you approach it from the perspective of help me improve, really, and that's true for mentors and sponsors. And then you do what they tell you to do, and you go back to them and say, because of you, I was able to achieve this particular goal. They become invested in you. And that's how the seeds of sponsorship start. It's because they believe in you. And then you become personal to them. So I would approach it from more of a humility rather than strident, like I deserve, to be sponsored because I'm smart and I'm a physicist, which you obviously are and capable. But I have found the humility of there's always room for improvement, and you are really good at what you do. People love to hear that. You're really, I want to be like you. Approach it from that perspective, and you will be surprised how many doors open up for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing I would add, and this is going to sound naive, as I don't know your field that well, is that if you can find, people sort of like the parents who said, you have to do engineering, but they happen to be a key physicist in the field. If you can find those type of people, I think they're going to really want to help you as well, because, if they have a daughter or something like that, if you can reach that type of person, I think that would be beneficial. I've found that even in my career as well. So.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. This concludes our panel. A huge thank you to Tina, Selma, Ann. You all are amazing. Thank you all so much. And thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you for tuning into this recording from She Opened the Door.